we're in a slightly different setup now because my neck was getting sore. I don't know how to erase the save file. One of these is gonna be erase. Oh, you can't really see. One of these is gonna be erase. I've been playing this save file with the 44 stars. I played that one a couple weeks back when I was on the bus. I went on the bus more than once. I didn't get 44 stars in one bus trip. Although it is possible if you have a long enough bus trip or if you're good enough at the game. That's not me. So this is a Japanese copy of Super Mario 64 DS, which doesn't make the game any more difficult because like very little of the game is in text anyway. But it is fairly interesting that I'm not playing the European version of the game. Turns out DSs are not region locked. Turns out that's pretty true. And I went to this game shop that had a bunch of Japanese games, and they were dirt cheap, honestly. And my boyfriend bought this copy. I didn't buy Mario 64 DS, but I did buy some other games. So the Super Mario Brothers and Ben 10 videos are already out. Those games I bought at the same shop, and I also bought Pokemon Gold. I bought Pokemon Gold. I don't have a Game Boy. I'm just kind of banking on the fact that someone I know is gonna buy a Game Boy at some point, so that I can play Pokemon Gold. I also bought Pokemon Yellow recently, Pokemon Pikachu version, the Japanese Yellow. I'm hoping that someone buys a Game Boy in the future, someone that I know. Now, I have expressed my dislike for the DS version. More accurately, I've said that I think the N64 version is better. Now, after playing this more recently, I still believe that. I still think that... What's it called? I still think that the 64 version is better. However, I want to be nice to this game and say what it does have to offer. And what it does have to offer is that it is a completely different experience. You know, with this game, you are not getting Mario 64. You're getting a game that looks like Mario 64 a great deal and has some levels in common with Mario 64, but it is distinctly different. It is distinctly different, and it's very cool. On its own merits. Like the parts of this game that are different from Mario 64 are oftentimes very good. The fact that you can play as 4 different characters is pretty cool. They're all pretty different enough that I can call them 4 characters. There is like 30 new stars. That's pretty cool. You know, the changes that are done to a lot of the levels, like they've extended Whomp's Fortress, like they're making good changes to the levels. And so you're probably wondering, Lily, if all of this is true and that all the changes are apparently good changes, then why do you think Mario 64 is the better game? It's simple. It's simple. This game controls like ass, and it still controls like ass. And everything, like there's no setup for this game that makes it play good. I've heard people say, oh, use the touchscreen. Use the touchscreen. The touchscreen's great. It lets you move in 360 degrees instead of 8 directions like the D-pad does. And no, the touchscreen feels terrible. And this is coming from someone, this is coming from someone who actually really likes Kid Icarus Uprising. and thinks the controls for Kid Icarus Uprising are fine. I don't usually mind using the bottom screen. It's just this game makes it as difficult to use as possible. Because there's a run button. That's at the core of a lot of the issues with this game. There is a run button. But, like, of course there has to be a run button. You can't walk if you don't have analog stick, right? So it makes sense that there's a run button, and that works if you're trying to play on the D-pad. But then it doesn't really work if you're trying to play on the bottom screen, because if you're trying to play on the bottom screen, whether or not you run is dependent on how far away you are pressing from your little guy on the bottom screen, right? So I'm trying to run right now. What is happening? You know, like, actually, what is happening? So I'm pressing on this and I'm moving, but as I move this, it's nonsense. You have this little circle that appears wherever you tap, but the circle is supposed to indicate the sort of relative analog value. So, like, you see here, I tap here, the red is like a dead zone, yellow you're walking, blue you're running. But it moves. It moves. You've got to keep your finger on the blue if you want to run. But then if you go too far, it starts moving around. And it's like, this is not how any analog stick on any controller works. But it works this way on the bottom screen of Mario 64, so I guess that's just what we're doing. Also, I think the game is not as good looking. And that's purely like nostalgia, but it's also not nostalgia. People always say, oh, you just like Ocarina of Time because you're nostalgic for it. And I'm like, no. That doesn't really apply to me as much because Ocarina of Time is not my favorite Legend of Zelda game. But it does apply to me in this case. People will say, no, you like Mario 64 because you're nostalgic for it. I'm like, I played Mario 64 DS first. I'm 21 years old. I wasn't there when Mario 64 came out, right? So it's not nostalgia, but also it kind of is. It's nostalgia for a time that I wasn't there for, in the sense that the game looks a certain way that is very much a product of its time. It's very much a product of the fact that it was one of the first 3D games ever, and, you know, the first kind of 3D platformer. And I'm sure it wasn't the first, but, like, one of the first, right? And you have all these, like, textures that are clearly just from some fucking library, and they just, like, look kind of stupid, and they don't really feel like Mario, but it just kind of works, because it's Mario 64, and Mario 64 has always looked that way. And that's one of the things I like about the game. The game looks kind of weird, and it looks a lot different from every other Mario game. And this game changes that by changing a lot of the textures, but it also just makes some of the textures worse. Like, look at this grass. Look at how lifeless this grass is compared to the bright, luscious grass from the original Super Mario 64. I don't hate this game. This game's pretty fun. But I do think it's worse than Mario 64, and I think it kind of sucks you have to play as Yoshi for so long. I like Yoshi. He's one of my favorite Mario characters. He's just a little guy. He goes, ha! And I really like when he does that. He goes, bring, ha! I really like when he does that. I like when he goes, ow! But I want to play as Mario. But equally, I don't want to play as Mario. I think I want to play as Mario because I'm not currently playing as Mario. But then when I play as Mario, I'm like, this shit sucks. Because this game is not as good as the one it's based on. Am I just being moany? Probably. I need to go get Mario if I want to make this. Oh yeah, you can play as Mario before unlocking him proper though. Because you can put on these hats that turn Yoshi into Mario. They also have ones that turn him into Wario and Luigi, which means if you're not taking damage, Yoshi's just the best character in the game because you can pick which hat you play with at the start of the level after you've unlocked them. So after you've unlocked all the characters, Yoshi is all of those characters, and he can switch between them in the levels, and he's Yoshi. None of the other characters can turn into Yoshi. They can turn into each other, they can't turn into Yoshi. So they made Yoshi the best character, which is honestly kind of awesome. But yeah, this game's just it's kind of a chore to play. Like, I'm not enjoying this. It's not like this is bad. But I do think, like, wow, what this game could have been as, like, a proper sequel to Mario 6. Like, imagine they fix the physics of this game, because the physics are pretty bad. They release it on a console that has analog controls, and that's it. That's all they have to do. They could fix the graphics a bit, make them look more like the original, but they would never do that, because the graphics are, like, for the most part, they should be seen as, like, an upgrade by most people. The only reason I like the old ones more is because they're kind of charming. But I definitely wouldn't say that the old graphics are objectively better. So I don't think any re-release of this game would change the graphics. I mean, you upgrade the graphics again, maybe, but they wouldn't make it look more like the original. But yeah, this game just, it reeks of lost potential, because Mario 64 is such a good game. And this game just expands on that, and then ruins the controls, which were perfect in the original, and goodbye.